This is Christopher John Bjerknes. It is December 7th, 2022. In my new book, Forbidden History of the Armenian Holocaust, I decoded the real meaning of the story of the stoning of Mary Magdalene. You can find my book at my website, CJBBooks.com, as well as several of my other books in which I explain the cryptic codes which are carefully incorporated into Kabbalah and Christianity. The gospel story of the stoning of Mary Magdalene is a Gnostic retelling of the legend of Eve consuming the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. Eve was cursed with death after she succumbed to Satan's temptation to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and thereby disobeyed Yahweh's law. The serpent told Eve that Yahweh had lied to her when he said she would immediately die if she ate or touched the fruit of the tree of knowledge. She ate it anyway on the devil's advice and did not die. This proved that Yahweh was a liar from the beginning because Eve survived. It also demonstrated that the serpent told the truth and bore no deceit. In his anger, Yahweh cursed Adam and Eve to eventually die and strip them of their immortality. Yahweh was a murderer from the beginning. From the Christian perspective, the story of Eve teaches us that Yahweh was a proven liar and a murderer from the beginning who cursed Adam and Eve with death in order to murder them after lying to them when he said they would immediately die if they touched or ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The serpent proved that sinning against Yahweh's laws does not in fact bring instant death. Jesus said in John chapter 8, verse 44, referring to Yahweh, the demiurge Yaldabaoth, the God of Israel, as the, quote, devil. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 5 states, Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The early Christians who composed the Gospels believed that the serpent is the good and loving God who blessed humanity with the knowledge needed to save their souls, and that Yahweh, the God of Israel, is a misanthropic cacodemon and the enemy of humanity. To the Kabbalists, Jesus is Satan, the serpent from the Garden of Eden, who returned to again tempt humanity to consume the knowledge, gnosis, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The Gnostics who crafted Christianity held the same view. The story of the stoning of Mary Magdalene is found in John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself, and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down, and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted himself up, and saw no one but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, Where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Mary Magdalene committed adultery. Eve also committed adultery with the serpent, and together they produced Eve's firstborn son, Cain. Mary Magdalene sinned against Yahweh by committing adultery like Eve, and was cursed to death by stoning, just as Eve was cursed to eventually die for her sins. Eve's sins had brought death to all humanity, and the forgiveness of Mary Magdalene's sins lifted that curse. Jesus lifted the curse of death from Eve in the form of Mary Magdalene by instructing all humanity that they were cursed with death by Yahweh for breaking his law. But the curse is a lie, and instead all humanity is immortal and can only obtain immortality by rejecting and disobeying the laws of Yahweh. Jesus thereby freed human beings from the cacodemon Yahweh and his laws and curses by inspiring them to realize how irrational and destructive those laws and that God truly are. Eve committed adultery by copulating with the serpent to produce the child Cain, which introduced Satan's blood into humanity. Adam and Eve were entirely composed of the divine holy light. This produced the Gentiles who descend from Cain. Mary Magdalene's adulterous act was to teach the Gentiles the gnosis of Jesus Christ and reenact the commingling of the holy light with the evil inclination of the other side. The slithering of a snake produces trails and markings on the ground, which Jesus mimicked by drawing in the dust. Yahweh's curse of death stated that Adam and Eve had come from the dust and would return to it when they died. Jesus wrote or drew in the dust once and then returned to it to do it again after threatening death to the sinners. This implied that he would strike them with the curse of death if they were to stone Mary, and he would return them to the dust from which humanity was made. Yahweh cursed Adam in Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. Jesus said, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. He meant there is no more sin, and that Mary Magdalene had not sinned by breaking Yahweh's laws. Early Christians engaged in orgies and homosexuality, which were illegal acts under Mosaic law. They freed themselves from Yahweh's curse of death on Adam and Eve by rejecting the concept that disobeying the liar and murderer Yahweh was sinful. Jesus instructed the lynch mob which set about to stone Mary Magdalene that their desire to follow Yahweh's law and stone Mary to death was a curse upon themselves because they had all committed sins against Yahweh, just like Adam and Eve. They could break that curse by rejecting Yahweh's law as Adam and Eve had done on the advice of Satan, and as the new Eve, Mary Magdalene, had done. They could forgive themselves by forgiving Mary and rejecting Yahweh's law, and thereby lift Yahweh's curse of death and obtain life everlasting through the gnosis, the knowledge that Jesus the serpent fed them literally in the form of the bread of his flesh and the wine of his blood. The lesson that Jesus taught is that it is Yahweh who is evil, not humanity, and it is his laws which cause death, not sin. According to Jesus, humanity should follow Satan, who does not deceive them, and not Yahweh, in order to become wise and immortal. I depend upon your generous contributions to continue my research and produce these videos, as well as my books. You will find links to my donation page and my website, where you can find all of my books, in the description below. The text which I just read to you is from my latest draft of my new book, Satanic Secrets of Jesus Christ, Volume 3, The Chaos Kampf. I need funding to complete this work and would greatly appreciate your donation. Thank you very much.